Good afternoon, viewers. We are going live from the NIOS studio and we are going to deal with English Book 1, Chapter 1 called Snakebite. I'm repeating this. This is the secondary course, English Book 1, Chapter number 1, Snakebite. And I'm Jamila Mariam and I teach English at Alcorn Public School. Once again, a very warm welcome. Now, today we are going to broadly divide this 1 hour into 2 parts. The first part would deal with the story, and the second part would help in consolidating all the material together. So, we'll just make a move forward. This is the name of the story. This is called Snakebite, and the writer is Shankar. Now, the objectives. First and foremost, don't be daunted, don't be scared. The story is primarily meant to be enjoyed. Now for that, I also want you to be tuned in and tuned in properly. You could just pull out your books. I could probably give you half a second extra to go and pull out your books. And we are on page 2. Another thing, when you enjoy the story, please feel free to provide your inputs. I wonder if you know the toll number. If you don't, they'll flash it on the screen for you, and the toll-free number is, and I'm just repeating it for you, 1800-180-2543. So please feel free to enjoy the story and to provide us also with the inputs. We are waiting here to receive your calls and enjoy the story together. Okay, so that's the first objective. It's not to learn only. Learning takes place along the journey. So first of all, we have to enjoy the story. So sit back and enjoy the story. And then we learn more about the author, because the author plays a very important role as far as understanding the story is concerned. In fact, there is a theory which says that there is no such story in the world which doesn't have autobiographical elements. So it always helps to put the things in context when you know something about the author. And knowing something about the author always lets us, come across very, very interesting information. And when you make a mental note of it, you realize that things work in your favor otherwise. Because learning takes place, in a very, very, okay, let me rephrase that. When you learn something, you never know when it's going to come in handy. So here you're going to know him only as the author of this chapter, but then you're going to know so many more things about him. And I will not spill all the beans right now. I'll just wait and let you know in some time. Okay, so that was the second objective. The third objective is to learn about the background of the story. So this short story is actually an excerpt from a book. And again, more information on that in some time, but this is part of the objective. Okay, more. We're also going to think and reflect about the different reactions of people in different situations. No two people react in the same manner to the same thing. And there is also a difference between reacting and responding. And we will discuss these things also when we are doing the story. During the course of the story, these things are going to come into play, and reaction and response, the difference between these two seemingly same words will be discussed. We'll also discuss blind faith in untrained medicine men. We'll also understand the importance of timely and effective communication. Okay, you can see the snakes here. Okay, snake. You can see the bee here, and the bee is smiling. Yeah, because today, viewers, the learners, we are going to know more about the bees. Okay, and also about the snakes. So we'll get some important and interesting information about snakes and learn a few things about bees also. Okay. So the first objective, that is to enjoy the story. In order to enjoy the story better, to understand the context better, we'll get to know something about the writer. This is the writer, K. Shankar Pillai. Okay, just take a good look at him. He's no more around. So you'll find this is the best acquaintance that you're going to have with him through photographs. Okay? Now, he was born in 1902 and lived till the age of 87 and passed away in 1989. His full name was Keshav Shankar Pillai, but he was best known as Shankar. He was an Indian cartoonist and writer. In fact, he was so good, he's the pioneer of political cartooning in India, and that is why he's also considered the father of political cartooning in India. He founded Shankers Weekly in 1948. Shankers Weekly closed down during the emergency in 1975. That was the last of it. Okay? Now more. He was awarded the Padma Vibhushan in 1976, which is the second highest civilian honor given by the Government of India. Today, he is most remembered for the Children's Book Trust established in 1957 and also setting up the Shankars International Dolls Museum in 1965. Now, I can see a smile spreading across so many people's faces because if the name Shankar did not ring a bell, at least the International Dolls Museum does the trick, because I know lots of people, if you stay in Delhi or if you have visited Delhi, I'm sure International Dolls Museum has been on your list. It's on Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg and it is a must-see for people who come to Delhi. If you are a resident of Delhi and you haven't seen it, please do put it on your list. Okay? I just have a few images also for you. Okay, now this is the motto of Children's Book Trust and I find it extremely encompassing. Okay, it says so much about Shankar the writer and Shankar the cartoonist. Okay, it says to entertain, to educate, to make growing up an exciting adventure. Okay, so it's not one of those boring mottos, it's not one of those preachy mottos. Okay, the objective and the mission is to entertain and to entertain in a very wholesome manner. Okay, not the kind of entertainment which you see mostly, on television these days or otherwise. Okay, it's a kind of wholesome entertainment which is going to be part of our learning experience also to make growing up an exciting adventure. So growing up should not be boring, growing up should not be monotonous, growing up should not seem like a burden. Growing up is something that we should look forward to. It should be an exciting adventure. Okay? Now, I have another slide with much the same thing. Now you would wonder, why is this person putting the same kind of a thing twice? Okay? Give me a chance to explain. Just look at this closely. Okay? Just look at this very, very closely. Did you look at the figure? It looks like a person who's standing, but it's made up of books. Okay? So does it have a message for us? Yes, it does. Books are an integral part of us. They make us. Okay? So we learn so much through books. Can you just do a very quick count of the number of books which are there, which have gone into making this figure over here? Okay? So one there, one which works as the shoulder and the arms, and one which makes the top half of the body. So we have at least 1, 2, and 3 books over here, and then the smiling face. So this is the Children's Book Trust, which was set up by Shankar Pillai in 1957. This is also on Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg in case people are interested, and I hope they are, because when you go in, you will really like the atmosphere over there. I've been there once and I would really recommend it to people. Okay, I've got a few pictures. Okay, this is inside the Children's Book Trust Library. It's one of the lesser known libraries, but it would be a good thing to spend some time over here and absorb the feel and the vibe of a library. The library is a beautiful place. It's a wonderful place to be a part of. Okay? So, if you can find it in your time to be part of some library, if this happens to be anywhere near your vicinity, go ahead and become a part of this library. Okay? Encourage your siblings, encourage people around you. It's a very, very good library. Okay? So, look at this. Now, this is the Shankers International Dolls Museum. This was set up in 1965. Just look at this. Such beautiful dolls. The entire museum has so many dolls. Okay? And you don't have to be 5 years old, 10 years old in order to enjoy a trip to the Dolls Museum. Any age, please feel free. Go over there and I'm sure you will come back enriched, because through the dolls you get to know so much about the culture of different places, of the different countries. Okay? Now, if you haven't understood that Shankar liked children and he liked the entire idea of growing up to be very exciting and adventurous, I'm sure you've understood it through these images now, and that is why I've put them together so that you understand what his focus was on. Okay? Now, the story that we are going to be dealing with today is actually part of a book which is called Life with Grandfather. So here's the cover page of the book, and you can see this child who's looking very naughty, very mischievous, who is pulling onto a crocodile, and he in turn, the child in turn, is being pulled by his own grandfather. Okay? Now I'm sure you can just take out the crocodile from the scene, but more or less, you're going to have something like this. Not have something like this. If you're about 15 years old right now, I'm sure you're far better behaved now. But maybe if you go back, if you rewind 10 years from now, I'm sure you've had some or the other scene wherein you've been throwing a tantrum for something nearly impossible. Okay? You've tried to put your foot down, you've thrown tantrums, and the people of your family have tried to drag you away from those things. Okay? So this is very, very eye-catching, especially because it's a crocodile over there, and the child doesn't seem to be scared of the crocodile at all. Okay? Okay, now a little bit about the background of the story. Now, this child that you saw on the cover page, his name is Raja, and he's growing up in a rural setting in the early part of the 20th century. Okay, now remember I mentioned that there are autobiographical elements in books. Okay, now if you remember again that he was born in 1902. So in the early part of the 20th century, he was growing up. Okay, he was a child. Okay, then he grew up further. Okay, so the early part of the 20th century, I mean, I just stated something which is so obvious, pardon me for that. Yes, so in the earlier part of the 20th century, okay, he was born. So whenever he's going to talk about growing up, you can see that it's going to reflect his own childhood. Okay, and it's going to be vastly different from the kind of childhood that I would understand or you are going to understand. Okay? Now, Raja, the hero, is an orphan. But you don't have to shed tears on that account. It's not a soppy story at all. Okay? There's no soppiness. Okay? There's nothing very, very tearful about this. Why? Because he has a loving family in his grandparents, in his uncle, a pet squirrel, the crocodile in the pond. Now, can you put the things together? Remember the last slide? Him pulling onto the crocodile? Yes. The crocodile in the pond and the temple elephant among others. So his was a childhood which was spent not just with people in the family, but also the animals in the village. Okay, so he was friends not just with a squirrel, which is more understandable, but also a crocodile, which is very, very eye-popping. Okay, very, very amazing. Okay, and it makes you want to lay your hands on the book to read it through, you know, cover to cover and find out how did that ever happen. Okay, and the temple elephant, among others. Okay. Now, his adventures make exciting reading, while the values he learns from his grandfather, who looks like a very stern disciplinarian outwardly, but he's actually very affectionate and open minded humanist at heart. And all the models and all the things that he learns, that he picks up, okay, that he doesn't even know that he's picking up, which is so woven with his experiences, they're very relevant even today. Never mind the difference in the milieu, never mind the difference in the atmosphere of the early 20th century. We're in the 21st century, so there's an entire, a gap of 100 years that we're talking about. So the milieu is definitely going to be different, but lots of reactions, lots of responses, lots of behavioral patterns are likely to be the same. In fact, when we read and go ahead with the story, you will realize that you will have many of those moments wherein you realize, I've been in this situation before. Okay? So everything is still relevant today. That's the beautiful part about literature. Never mind how old it is. Okay? You feel that there are so many things which talk about a bygone era, but so many things are so relevant and so pertinent today. Okay? They hit at the exact spot which is so meaningful even a century after the book was written and published. So this was regarding the background of the story. Okay. Now, because the story is set in Kerala, again another autobiographical element, because the writer himself was born in Kerala, okay, and the story is based in Kerala, it's situated there, okay, that is why I've got a picture of this beautiful, Kerala is anyway supposed to be very, very beautiful. So just feast your eyes on the green over there, just look at the beautiful greens over there. Just look at the tall trees over there and just look at the beautiful isolated house over there. Okay, so just feast your eyes on all that green. Okay, and it must have been even more beautiful back then. Okay, so this is the setting that we are talking about. Okay, the main characters obviously is Raja. Okay, he's a young child, his grandfather, his grandmother, and an old man. Next. Okay, now why do I have the coconut tree over here? A, because it is an integral part of the Kerala scene. Okay, you can't imagine Kerala without a few things like the backwaters of Kerala, like the houseboats over there, like the coconut. Okay, now the coconut plays an important part in the story, and that is why I've got you these images so that you have a fair idea about what I'm talking about. Okay, most houses in Kerala are going to have a yard wherein they're going to have these coconut trees. Okay, now that's a coconut tree. Then the green one. Okay, and then when it begins to dry, and then when it is the shell. Okay, the coconut has been scraped off, it has been taken away, taken off. Okay, and that's the shell left behind. Okay, now this is a snake. No prizes for guessing that one. Okay, why is a snake important? Because the title of the story is Snake Bite. Okay, and we do come across a snake. So here is an image of a snake, and the snake does strike terror into people's heart. It does. Okay, so there are no two ways about it, no two opinions about it. You have to belong to a sliver, a very, very tiny portion of the entire population in order to be so enlightened, okay, and in order to be so wise and so knowledgeable to understand the difference between a snake which is non-poisonous, and that is why you don't need to run away from it, and a poisonous one. Okay, the very word snake is enough to strike terror, fear in people's heart. Okay, now these are paddy fields. The rice fields are known as paddy fields. Okay, in the story, the paddy field is also important because the grandfather, the old grandfather, is going to run through the entire paddy field. You know, And it's quite a stretch. It's not easy, but he's going to do that for a particular reason. Okay, now that you have these images in your mind, okay, I want you to situate all these characters, place all those characters in this setting. We're talking about the childhood of this child who is called Raja, who's living with his grandparents in Kerala. So what happens when the story begins? And it is a very short story, okay? So one day, Raja is just, because of his adventurous nature, he's there in the compound of the house and he's going through the things over there. There are a few things strewn over there. And all the pile of things, the discarded things and the otherwise, things which are otherwise lying over there, they're always a matter of great interest for children. Maybe the parents, the elders are not so interested. He doesn't have parents here in this story. I'm just talking about generally, otherwise, but children have an everlasting fascination for anything which is going to be junk, which is considered junk by other people, because they will go through it, they will unravel it, they'll just try and figure out, they'll try and fix it and see if they can make it just, they can just do something about it, okay? So he's there in the compound and he sees this snake crawling over there. And when he sees the snake crawling, the snake also sees him. The snake spots him, and in this particular scene, there's no fear. The snake doesn't seem to be very fearful of the child, and the child doesn't seem to be fearful of the snake at all, okay? He's got no idea about why he should be afraid of snakes, okay? That is, again, another very, very beautiful thing about childhood, that you don't fear so many things. Fear is something that we begin to absorb as we grow up. So he is growing up. I'm so sorry. He's there in the compound, and what happens is that he sees the snake, and the snake sees him, and it crawls inside a discarded shell, a coconut shell. And when the child Raja sees that the snake has crawled inside the shell, what it does is puts a stone over there and brings it to his grandmother. Now, children are not just curious, they're also very excited. So every time they will do something like this, and for them, it's a fascinating catch. Okay, for Raja, it's a fascinating thing. His day is made, he's done something like this. So he goes running to his grandmother. Now, how do you think the grandmother is going to react? Can you put yourself in the grandmother's situation? Okay, I'm sure all of you are going to understand that she's going to almost suffer a mini heart attack. Okay, because the child comes running up to her and tells her, "Look, grandmother, I've got a snake inside here." The grandmother doesn't know what to do. She is also very, very scared, and she screams for the grandfather. The grandfather comes, okay, because he's heard the grandmother call for help, and he comes over there. The grandmother repeats it for him that he's got a snake over there in the coconut shell. The grandfather, without much ado, without any explanations, counter explanations, without asking him for anything, straight away he just throws the coconut shell away. And what does the snake do? Obviously, the snake is going to crawl out of it. We don't know more about the snake after that, okay? But later in the day, even after having been given a dose by his grandparents, Raja doesn't learn his lessons. He's poking around again in the garden, and this time he gets stung by a bee. Okay, now that's very, very painful. So he comes running again, and he tells his grandmother that he has been stung. No, he doesn't use the word, that he has been stung. He doesn't say that completely. He says he has been bitten. Okay, now because he says bitten and he hasn't elaborated upon that, what has happened, and as readers you can surely put two and two together, that the grandmother has assumed that he has been bitten by a snake because there is a history to it. Just the same morning, he had come with a snake. She knew that he had been playing around with the snake. So immediately she connects the dot and jumps to the conclusion that he has been bitten by a snake. Now, if in the morning she had been so afraid that he was playing with a snake and she had called for help, she had called for grandfather to help them out of the situation, you can imagine how the panic button must have been pressed in this situation. It's not just him playing with the snake. It is also him having been bitten by that snake. Now, unfortunately, the child does not provide further explanations. We can just take a very quick break right now and then come back to the story in some time. Thank you.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो मित्रों हम उठे और जागे मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बात कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने स्वयं बने
Welcome back to the NIOS studio. For those of you who are joining us right now, we are doing chapter number 1, lesson bite. We are doing chapter number 1, snake bite from the secondary course, English. And I'm Jamila Mariam. Okay. So, we are dealing with the story. The grandfather runs with Raja to, he runs across the paddy fields to a place wherein there is an old man, okay? He calls for the old man, okay? And the old man comes out of the hut. The old man, obviously, he's graying, okay? and he looks very, very wizened and seasoned. Now, why has he gone over there? It's because the grandfather has faith in that old man to cure Raja of the snake bite. Please remember that the grandfather and the grandmother, they have jumped to the conclusion that Raja has been bitten by a snake and they need to cure him, and they need to cure him very, very quickly because nobody wants to take any chances as far as a snake bite is concerned. Okay? Yes, there are people who will tell you that all snakes are not poisonous, but people are not going to waste their precious time. Okay? In such emergencies, there is a what is generally referred to as a golden period, wherein that golden window period, wherein if emergency aid is provided, okay, and a line of treatment is begun, then you have chances of survival. Otherwise, it can prove fatal. Okay, that is why the grandfather and the grandmother, they don't waste any time in trying to put things together by speaking about it. Okay, it's an emergency and they need to rush. So the person that they think of in order to cure him of the snake bite is an old person in the village who resides across the village, across the fields in a hut over there. So the old man comes out of the hut and he takes a look at the child, and then the child is made to sit on the lamp and a few mantras are recited, and then he's given some water to drink from a brass vessel. Okay, and then after some time, because actually as readers, you know and we know that he hasn't been bitten by a snake at all, he's been stung by a bee. Now, when he sees that this is, snowballing out of hand, he had no idea, the child had no idea. Maybe he didn't admit it out of fear, okay, that he had not been bitten by a snake. He knows that they think he's been bitten by a snake. He knows better. He's been bitten by a bee, he knows better. But, he's not able to act on that voice which is telling him from within that I'd better let my grandparents know that it is just a bee. A bee sting is not supposed to be fatal. Okay, so he could have assuaged their fears. He could have assured his grandparents that please don't worry. But this is what childhood is all about. You become so scared that even if you do know something, you're so fearful of the scolding that is going to follow that you just stop yourself in your tracks, even if you have something to confess, because you don't want to invite further trouble. So, like an obedient child, okay, because the time for mischief is over now, okay, at least for that day. So, he just sits very, very obediently in the lap, and whatever is being done in order to cure him, as per the line of treatment that has been taken up by the old person who's supposed to be a healer as far as these things are concerned. Okay. Now, after some time, the pain of the bee sting, it has subsided totally. Okay. He wanted to admit that. He wanted to tell the old man that. He wanted to tell his grandparents that. But again, he had second thoughts about it. If I'm going to tell them, they're going to be very, very angry with me. Okay. And also, I'm sure, being the child that he is, being the curious, observant child that he is, you're supposed to read between the lines and know that he also wanted to test where this entire episode is going to lead. He wants to check. The old man is supposed to cure him of the snake bite. He doesn't have any snake bite to begin with. Maybe he's just watching this scene also like an observer. He's got more information than anyone else. Everyone is very scared. He's not scared because he knows he hasn't been bitten by a snake. So, in some manner, he's also observing everything like a fly on the wall. Okay, what is happening? Let me see whether or not this old man will admit, because the old man is supposed to know. The only other person who should have told them that he hasn't actually been bitten by a snake is the old man. He should have known better. He was supposed to cure snake bites. So if you can't even identify a snake bite, then how are you even supposed to cure it? So that question also must have been lurking in Raja's mind, and that is why he kept his confession to himself. After some time, the old man told the grandparents that now he is fully cured, and it was very good and it was extremely important that he was brought to me at that time, because if he hadn't been brought to me, at that time, then we never know what might have happened. It was indeed a snake that had bitten him. Now you can imagine Raja's plight. Okay? What do you think he must have been thinking about the old man? The old man was extremely clever. He was just playing on the fear of the grandparents. Okay? Now, does it also ring a bell? When I say ring a bell, it is an expression which means that when you hear something, does something else come to your mind? Does something else flash across your mind? You know, this line which says that thank God you brought him to me at the right time. Otherwise, it could have proved dangerous. In as many words, he said that. I'm not exactly quoting from the text, but this is the, the underlying meaning. Now, most people say that when they want to take advantage of your fear and love for your child, okay, they are likely to say that, okay. And in the earlier times, these people would not be paid their fees, their consultation fees, in cash, okay. But when they went back home, the very, very grateful grandparents sent the old man gifts. Even now, Raja doesn't tell them any better. He's kept that entire episode in his mind and all his observations also in his mind. So it tells us about the reactions of different people to different situations. Okay? We react. Okay? The grandparents reacted. If they could have taken 2 more minutes, they would have figured out, if they had asked Raja the details, then Raja would have told them that he had been stung by a bee, that he had been bitten by a bee. That would have saved the entire trouble of rushing helter-skelter, to that old man's hut across the paddy fields. Okay? It would have saved them the entire trouble. And it would have saved them that kind of undeserved gratitude for that old man. Okay? And such people, so-called healers, are also preying upon such innocent and gullible people. When I say gullible, a gullible person is someone who can be fooled easily. Okay? So, if they had responded, if they had waited for some time, if they would have asked him a few questions, then they would have known. But surprisingly, not just the grandparents, the old man also does not ask Raja any questions. Okay, and I'm sure you're also feeling that had he asked him, then the entire thing, the cat would have been out of the bag, so to say. The truth would have been out. So he wanted to continue with that story of him having been bitten by a snake. So these are the different responses that people have, the different kind of reactions, the different kind of responses, and not all responses are articulated. Like in this case, Raja keeps that truth to himself. He doesn't let his grandparents know. Initially, it is because of a fear of being scolded, but later on, it also must have been, prompted by seeing the entire thing through. Okay? He wanted to see whether or not the person would finally even admit it or not. And he was right, he did not. And they will not, because such people thrive on other people's lack of knowledge, their ignorance, their vulnerability. But then you can't even fault the grandparents, because precious moment cannot be lost in trying to figure out things which you think can be taken care of later. Okay, so this is the interesting story. It tells us about how people react. It tells us about how this adventurous spirit which is there in the child is getting him into trouble. It also causes him pain, but it also gives him a lot of lessons. And as readers also, it gives us a lot of lessons, okay, a lot of learning. Now, along the way, we have learned a few words. Now, we'll just consolidate everything, okay. This was the story, okay. The story has also given us lots of things that we can, just work together at. Okay, interesting information about snakes. Most snakes are not poisonous. Snakes have very good vision. At the same time, they're all color blind. Now that sounds very, very fascinating. Okay. Now, there are about 2,000 species of snakes in the world. In India, there are about 270 species, of which only 70 are poisonous. Some Indian species are the cobra, the krait, the flower snake, the rat snake, the python, and the Russell's viper. Snakes have different habitats. Some snakes live in holes, others in warm seas, semi-deserts, swamps, and trees. The largest snake in the world is the green anaconda, found in the jungles of South America with length exceeding 5 meters. Okay, 5 meters doesn't sound like a lot, does it? It does. It's a lot. It's a lot. The smallest snake can be just about 10 centimeters long. Now, about the bees. Bees live in colonies or hives of 50,000 bees on an average. Bees have an inborn ability to communicate. I mean, we think they're only buzzing. They're not just buzzing, they're communicating. Okay? Now, bees' language is a language of smells and dance movements. The honeybee dance was observed and noted by Aristotle as early as 330 BC. In fact, a professor of zoology in Munich, Germany, earned the Nobel Prize in 1973 for his groundbreaking research on this dance language. His book, The Dance Language and Orientation of Bees, published in 1967, presents 50 years of research on honeybee communication. So you can imagine the kind of research people have done on what looks like a very, very, very tiny insect. Okay, or a bird, I'm not too sure. Okay. Bees sting only in self-defense. So every time you're crying in pain, if you've ever been stung by a bee, please remember they do it only in self-defense, okay? And after stinging, a bee dies instantly. So it's not like a bee is a sadist and it just wants to sting you and see you in pain. No, it's paying for that sting with its life. It dies instantly. You know, that little image over there, okay? That's the reaction to a bee sting. The use of ice pack reduces the swelling and pain caused by a bee sting. When stung by a bee, one should remove the stinger as quickly as possible. Okay, now we'll move on to adjectives. Now these are a few adjectives. Now what are adjectives? Adjectives add to the nouns. Okay. Now these are a few random adjectives, and what we'll do is we'll put them in order according to which person they apply to in the story. Okay. So amongst all these, for Raja, we'll use obedient, innocent, adventurous, mischievous, naughty. Okay. Then for grandparents, very, very caring. It is very, very evident. You can see that they wear their heart on their sleeve as far as their love for their grandchild is concerned. They're very, very simple, very affectionate, and superstitious also, because instead of seeking out a doctor, a registered doctor, or a bona fide doctor, they have gone to this person who is only resorting to mantra. Now, please understand that that old man is not like a healer who practices, not someone who's dealing with herbs. He doesn't do anything of that. You know, that's a science by itself for people who believe in that, for people who belong to the, that particular school of thought, that line of treatment which follows the Unani system, the Ayurveda system, and the other traditional methods of healing. We're not discounting that. There's a lot of research which has gone into proving that these are extremely effective. So I'm not running them down at all. But this person doesn't seem to be doing anything of that sort. Okay, he only had a few mantras. And anyway, the entire thing is very, very obvious. He was very, very shrewd actually, okay, because it wasn't even a snake bite to begin with, okay. So the grandparents, coming back to the grandparents, they were superstitious because they went to that kind of an old person, okay. Then they were very, very nervous, very gullible, they could be fooled, and they're very, very concerned about the welfare and the well-being of their grandson. And for the old man, obviously, he's a pretender, very clever, more words we can use, very shrewd, okay, very cunning. We're going to do a few vocabulary reinforcement exercises depending upon the time available. We'll understand synonyms and antonyms and get acquainted with sound words. Yes, prep for that, because though it sounds difficult, it isn't. We'll also know the past tense forms of some commonly used words, discriminate between regular and irregular verbs, frame requests and make inquiries. Okay. Now, this is the crossword provided to you in your books. Okay. This is part of the chapter at the end, you know, the exercises which are there at the end of the chapter. So, you have the clues given over there. Children learn to move like this on 4 limbs before they can walk. So, this is crawl, a reptile, a snake. Okay, in the crossword, the boy got malaria because he was dashed by mosquitoes. So, the 6-letter word over here is going to be bitten. Rice fields are known as paddy fields. Okay, a fruit with a hard covering, coconut, a reptile, this is a repetition here, snake, a metal, here it's brass, and a part of the body. Okay, this is a finger. Okay, so this is the solved crossword puzzle for you based on the clues that we have just discussed. Okay, so you could do it at your own leisure at home. Now, opposites. What are opposites? Opposites are antonyms. Okay. Now, for far, it would be, okay, now we'll do them later. First, we'll do these words and then we'll look for their opposites. Okay, now the answers. For far, it will be near. Antonyms are opposites. Synonyms are similar meaning. In case you have any problem, just try and go according to the sounds. Antonyms, opposites, and synonyms, similar meanings. Okay? So, for far, it will be near. For opened, it would be closed. For appeared, it would be disappeared. And for always, it will be never. Okay? Now, these are a few other antonyms. For loose, it will be tight. Please don't confuse this loose with losing. That's losing or winning. Okay? In that case, it is spelled with a single O. This one is loose, something which is not tightly packed. Okay? This is not the winning and the losing one. For happy, it will be sad. Loudly, the opposite would be silently. Noisy would be quiet. A noisy classroom, a quiet classroom. Young, old, safety, danger. Okay. Now, let's just quickly match the opposites. Let us see how much time we have. Yeah, we have. Okay. So, for quietly, it will be noisily. For slowly, it will be quickly. For went, it will be came. Okay. I went to the market. I came back. Okay. So, went and then came. Dangerous, harmless. Okay. Now, synonyms, like I said, synonyms are similar in meaning. Okay. So, for stain, it would be, and we are doing this with reference to the chapter. Okay. So, for stain, it would be a mark. For far, it would be some distance away. Okay. Not too far, some distance away. These are synonyms. Okay. Far would be some distance away. Ache is a pain. Okay. Now, these are the fill in the blanks that you have there in the chapter. It's part of the exercise. She's wearing a diamond ring on her index finger. Which one is the index finger? This one. Okay. In fact, I have a slide which will tell you the names of the fingers. Okay. I have dash in my legs. I have pain in my legs. Okay. Because I am tired. I grew colorful flowers in my garden. Farmers plow their fields with tractors. You can see that. That's a plow. In the earlier times, they used to have a plow, you know. Obviously, it was very, very different. These are the different ones. These are the tractors which are being used to plow the fields. Okay? Now, like I just told you, these are the names of the fingers. So, this one is the thumb. This is the index finger. This is obviously the middle finger. This is referred to as the ring finger. And that's the little finger. Now, we'll move on to onomatopic words. Okay? Onomatopic words, don't get scared of the size of the word and the spelling, okay? These are sound words. Now, basically what it means is when we say a certain word, it imitates the sound. For example, when I say hiss, okay? I'm repeating that, hiss. So what is it doing? It is imitating the meaning. So snakes hiss, okay? That's a sound word, okay? These are referred to as onomatopic words. Bees buzz. So when I say buzz, you have that vibratory sound, okay? Cats meow, okay? Yeah, it takes you back to your nursery classes, in fact, okay? I need to just kind of go through this quickly. Birds chirp, the parrots talk. Lions roar. Elephants trumpet. These are all sound words, please remember. Donkeys bray. The monkeys chatter. The cows low. You know, generally we use the word moo, okay? Very few people understand that the actual word is low. The cows low, but because of the nursery rhymes and because moo sounds much better, okay? We say the cows moo, okay? But the actual word is low. Okay, bears growl. Okay, now we'll move on to regular verbs and irregular verbs. First of all, we need to understand what verbs are. Verbs are action words, okay? So when you add an ed or you put a d to the simple present tense verbs, then you get the simple past tense. Like shock plus ed is shocked, reach plus ed would be reached, live plus d would be lived. So you either add an ed or you simply add a d if the word is already ending with an e. Okay, so these verbs are referred to as regular verbs because they have d or ed endings as a regular feature in the past tense. Okay, but for some words we don't have it. Okay, so for take it is not taked, for throw it is not throwed, for catch it is not catched. Okay, these are the common mistakes that we can make. So these are not regular verbs, they don't take d at the end like that for the simple past tense. So these are a few examples. For take, it's going to be took. For throw, it's going to be threw. For catch, caught, and likewise. Okay, deal, dealt. So it doesn't end in d and ed. Okay, it changes. So the pattern changes, and that is why they are referred to as irregular verbs. Now, quickly we'll go through making requests. How do we make requests? Because making requests is very, very important. Could you open the bottle for me, please? Okay, so that is how you say, that is how you put in a request, because that's how you make the world go round. Okay. Now, if you, in case you need to borrow a pencil, what you're going to say? Do you have a spare pencil? May I borrow it, please? I have forgotten to bring mine. And your friend, if he's going to be nice, say, of course, here you are, and you're going to say thank you. Okay. So the world goes around if everyone is going to be nice to each other. Okay, for example, you're supposed to be studying and you have a call and you will just say, can you call back later? I'm busy now. Can you please turn down the volume? I'm not able to focus on my work. So these are the polite ways of requesting people. Okay, so please, could you just sit down and listen? Can you open your books at page 47, please? If you see someone chewing gum, which can be so awfully distracting, you would say, can you please refrain from chewing gum? Okay, and if you're very, very confused, you don't know your way, you're going to be asking your way, like this gentleman is doing, or helping them. Okay, so giving directions, turning left, turning right, going straight down, or going across. Okay, yes, going straight, going across. So these are a few things that can help you in order to help people. Not just ask, make inquiries, but also respond to requests for help for people to locate their destinations. So you could probably request a little girl to close the door, okay, to close the window, to borrow someone's bicycle. Okay, now we are going to come to describing people. You know, there's the old man in the story, okay. So in case Raja is writing a paragraph, okay, on the old man. He could say something, he could write something like this. An old grey-haired man came out of the hut. He was tall and wore a long white robe. He was thin. Now, there's some mistake over here. I'm sorry for that. Okay. He was thin and had a white beard. His inquisitive eyes bored into me. He looked seasoned and wise. He was gentle and polite. So, in about 7-8 sentences, you're describing someone. So, in case you're asked to describe someone, you're going to describe how they look, how tall, short, stout, you know, the build, what do their eyes look like, you know, what is their general bearing, do they look kind, do they look nice, do they look aggressive. So, these are the kind of things, you know, how old, are they young, are they middle-aged, is the person a child. So, these are the few details that you should incorporate when you're describing people, how they look. So, when you're going to describe them, you're going to describe their hair, you're going to describe the kind of look. You know, someone's eyes could be twinkling, someone's eyes could be sparkling, someone's eyes could look very, 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 okay. Then you could describe their clothes, whether they're wearing neat clothes, well-ironed clothes, okay, whether the clothes look very sharp, very nice, okay, whether they're very, very well turned out, very well put together. So, these are the different ways and you describe people. So, if you're talking about fingers, okay, whether the fingers, it could be anything, not just finger. You're talking about the smile. Is it a very pleasant smile? Okay. When you talk about the entire personality, does the person come across as very pleasing, very charming? So, these are the few words that you should weave into your description of people. I think with this, we can safely put this segment to rest. We're almost at the end of the scheduled 1 hour. Nobody's called in with questions. We have been waiting. I hope you're going to, if not right now, then maybe in some time, maybe for the next segment at least, you're going to call in with your inputs and make this entire experience a mutually enriching one. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have been here. Thank you.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने। परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता